So
now I can't imagine, like, if you didn't get those Instagram notifications, you didn't get the likes on that post you made. It's a real problem for these kids.
it's a real problem. So let's start off with narrative economics from Robert Schiller. How stories go viral and drive major economic events. Never did I think I'd see a Nobel laureate talking about stories going viral causing financial events. I mean, it makes sense. But
we saw it not too long ago with the contagion period.
Yeah. Well, and he cites that particularly well. The contagion period was this knee-jerk psychological response where we wound up having like I want to call it just over a $1 trillion impact to the economy, but we added like 5 trillion of stimulus into it or something, or maybe it's billions, but whatever. Into it, we 5 times added what the economy ultimately lost. So of course people were flush with cash, and when people flush with cash they buy stuff.
Yeah.
And what happens when a lot of people buy stuff? Inflation.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it's not rocket science.
Exactly.
But we did these things because we were so afraid. Fear.
Yep.
Fear drives decisions. So the key themes and insights from this book: the power of economic narratives. Economic events like recessions, booms, and financial crises are shaped by stories that go viral. The second somebody of high-profile status says we are in a recession, and that's picked up and it goes viral, the American population will believe we are in a recession, whether we are actually in one or not.
Honestly, this happens, I think, on every scale. So, like, given what we do in our show, right? I'm plugged into a lot of the other financial literacy shows, and it's on my feed, right?
Yeah.
I like to see what everyone's talking about. And sure enough, when I see one person start talking about how to buy a home, very basic piece of content.
Yep.
Next thing you know, all the other channels are putting up videos how to buy a home.
Yep.
It's like they all have them on standby waiting. So like you said, if one notable person comes out and says we're in a recession, game over. Now,
For the record, I apparently am not notable enough. Just food for thought.
not yet.
Not yet. These narratives influence consumer behavior, investor sentiment, and policy decisions. A great example, again, going back to the recession scenario. If somebody you believe and trust says we're in a recession, and you adamantly believe that, what are you going to do? You're not going to spend as much. You're going to be more thoughtful about your money. You're going to be more concerned. You're going to have all this extra anxiety because this person that you believe and respect and trust has told you that we are entering a financially bad time. Compounding this further, viral narratives in history have been very pronounced. Schiller analyzes major financial events through the lens of popular narratives, such as the Great Depression and the belief in excessive speculation, the Bitcoin boom driven by a distrust of central banks, and inflation fears shaping public expectations and policy, the last of which we're clearly living through right now. He also goes into memes and contagion in economics. Economic ideas spread like viruses, some catching on and some shaping behavior, while others fade away. But social media and mass communication accelerate the spread of these financial narratives by using things like memes, which are supposed to be jokes or funny, but that split snapshot with no information, no context, can be overwhelmingly powerful, even though they might seem silly at face value.
Yeah, absolutely. And you gotta ask yourself, there's so much money, right, behind some of these, big media, right? That who would it benefit if they actually had a program and they came out and said, I think that we're actually in a recession right now and that just hasn't been declared yet. So you should all stop spending your money. Yeah. It would not help anybody that helps them pay for ads on the show. Yeah. I can't see a world where that would ever exist.
100% right. And then you look at the data and you say, is it that bad? I mean, if you look at the data, not really. Does it look like there's an asset bubble? Yeah, there does.
Right, but it's to Schiller's point and to your point, right? These stories that shape our values and our belief systems, right? I think I saw a meme the other day, right, about this. It said, I think it would only take one generation where if we were required to send our kids to school, okay, at an early age, let's call it 6 months, right? And there was a program that taught kids at school how to walk, right? And one generation later, I bet you a majority of people would think, in order for my kid to walk, I have to send him to school. It would just take one. It would just take one generation, right?
Well, yeah,
because you would hear a story from the people that are older than you, tell you, oh, this is how I taught my kid to walk. I sent him to school, and that's how they learned.
This is also why whenever I read stories about religion and I listen to them, I take them at a much deeper value than most people do. Like I try to find the commonalities in other religions. Those of you who don't know what I do in my spare time, which is I have very little of these days, is I tend to read a lot and watch a lot about archaeology and history. It's kind of nerd out on it.
That's your thing.
And one of the things that I've grown really, really interested in my 40s was how there's a lot of symmetry in religions across the world at different places at different times, right? Like how does a religion for the Incan and Mayans, if you will, seem very similar to some of the religious and visual indications of religion in Europe and like Turkey, for example. There's a lot of things around the world that there was no way to communicate. There was no phone system. People had to sail across the oceans in order to spread this stuff, but yet the stories are very similar. It's kind of hard to deny that there's something there,
right?
But that's the way you taught the next generation, is with stories,
right?
So economists tend to ignore these kind of narratives, right? But there's a compelling reasons why they shouldn't. And Schiller goes on to say that traditional economic models assume rational behavior and overlook the power of storytelling. If your model is based on humans acting rationally, then your model's probably wrong.
It's 100%. Yeah. I mean, I think most humans tend to act when it's too late, right? When it's already gone past that point.
Yeah.
Right?
Schiller tends to argue throughout this book that economists should incorporate narrative analysis to better predict market trends. Say, hey, this is what the rational person would do, but this is also the sentiment around it. So, for example, we use Bitcoin because I know how much you love it. If the narrative is that this is a hedge against inflation, right? Or there's a deep distrust for the U.S. government and that this is going to be your secure way around it, and that's the narrative, and it's believed and bought so much that Bitcoin's over 100,000, you need to at least incorporate that narrative and that deep distrust into whatever your underlying disbelief is that crypto is good. Another great one, gold is a hedge against inflation. How? It's a very logical concept, right? So people always say, Chris, what's the best hedge against inflation? And I always say, keep investing.
Yeah, what's the thought process behind gold?
Because they think that people are, currency is going to be devalued because everything's going to cost so much. Well, guess what? What do you buy gold with?
Yeah, exactly.
Currency.
Exactly. I mean, back at it during a time when every dollar was backed by a piece of gold or silver.
Different.
Right? Completely different. Yeah, carried a different weight back then. But now, not so much.
But people don't use their logical brain. They buy the narrative. Oh, my God, that guy's got a lot of gold. He must be rich. Right? Not true at all, but yet that's where we wind up.
Is that why Mr. T wore all the...
Talk about what is
cool. Yeah.